The Bible is a wonderful book. It's a book that we should just enjoy reading. So for this talk, I thought I'd give a couple of suggestions for adding to our reading pleasure. Here's the first. Don't pass quickly over the details. Stop and investigate. And at times, you'll be very glad you did.
What is it with David Splane and his seeming obsession with telling Jehovah's Witnesses not just to read their Bibles, but how they should be reading their Bibles?
When you're reading the Bible, try to get the whole picture. What about Joseph's half-brothers and Joseph himself? What do you know about them? What about Judah, Simeon, Levi, Dan, Naphtali? What do you know? So write down their characteristics and try to figure out how they might get along. Bible reading isn't a chore, it's a joy. Get the whole picture of what you're reading, and you'll enjoy it even more. I'd like to talk to you on the theme, Do the Math. Yes, you heard right, do the math. Sometimes doing the math is the only way we can make a timeline or get interesting background information that makes our Bible reading more enjoyable. And you do want to make your Bible reading more enjoyable, don't you? Of course you do.
This, for me, is just one of many examples of why it simply doesn't work for the governing body to throw themselves in front of the camera at every opportunity, whether it's in a JW broadcasting episode or at a Gilead graduation, which then gets broadcast in front of millions of Jehovah's Witnesses. They don't have self-awareness, and they don't understand how incredibly condescending and patronizing and arrogant they come across when they're trying to impress us with their knowledge. And in David Splane's case, he seemingly leaps at any opportunity to impress us with his deep, profound knowledge of the Bible and how important it is that we read the Bible the way he does, so that, for example, when we're reading the Bible, we do the math and fixate over such questions as, did Noah and Abraham, did their lives overlap in any way? How do we construct a timeline that will tell us whether the lives of these Bible characters overlapped by maybe a year or two? That is the level of obsession that David Splane expects from Jehovah's Witnesses when it comes to their Bible research. And the message clearly that he's sending out is, I am the sort of person who would do this research. I spend hours and hours in my office devoting myself to these mathematical exercises where I drill down to the scriptures and try to find out all of these juicy details, questions that no one else is asking. I'm asking them, and I, David Splane, will get to the bottom of these mysteries. That seems to me to be the underlying message here. And to give us one example of the profound truths, the profound wisdom that can be gleaned from essentially mental masturbation on Bible verses, David Splane is now going to regale us with his knowledge about Heman.
Now let's take an example. You're reading in the book of 1 Chronicles. Now there are a lot of names in 1 Chronicles, and you come across the name Heman. If you were just interested in covering material, you'd probably pass over it and go on to the next verse. But you're not in a rush. And you notice a cross-reference beside the name. It refers you to 1 Chronicles 6:33. So you decide to investigate. And in doing so, you learn something heartwarming about Jehovah. Let's do that. 1 Chronicles chapter 6. It says, These are the men who served with their sons. Of the Kohathites, Heman, the singer, son of Joel, son of Samuel. So this Heman was Samuel's grandson. Now, what do we know about his family situation? Well, his father, Joel, and his uncle, Abijah, were judges. But they had a terrible reputation. They'd rule in your favor if you could pay enough, but if you were poor, forget it. And the whole country knew about it. At one point, the Bible says that all the elders of Israel came to Samuel and said they didn't want Joel and Abijah as judges anymore. They wanted a king. Jehovah was furious, and he couldn't have been too happy with Joel and Abijah either. Now, can you imagine the effect that this corruption had on the reputation of Heman's family? The shame? But like Hezekiah, Heman didn't allow his father's bad example to paralyze him. Heman developed his own personal relationship with Jehovah. How do we know? We followed a few clues. We followed a few cross-references, and we came to 1 Chronicles chapter 25 and verse 5. Let's do that. It says, "All of these were sons of Heman, a visionary of the king in matters pertaining to the true God, to his glory. Thus, the true God gave Heman 14 sons and 3 daughters." Did you see it? A visionary of the king. What was a visionary? It was a kind of prophet. Now let's see. Samuel was a prophet. And now Heman was a prophet. Do you see what's heartwarming? Jehovah was dealing with Heman in much the same way he had dealt with his grandfather. Jehovah does not hold the sins of the fathers against the sons.
Well, I'm not so sure about that, David, for reasons I will share with you shortly, but wow. What a dull, tedious exercise he's just dragged us all through. If you weren't paying attention, or if your attention got diverted during this bizarre rambling about Heman, it makes it more interesting if you imagine Heman as Heman, doesn't it? But if you fail to follow along with this, what he's essentially saying is a grandson of Samuel became a prophet even though his father was a bad dude. So isn't it great? Isn't it heartwarming that Jehovah didn't hold it against Heman that his father wasn't very pleasant? Isn't that heartwarming? Doesn't it show that Jehovah is fair and just and doesn't hold it against you what previous generations of your family did? Well, I see your reference of 1 Chronicles, David Splane, 1 Chronicles chapter 6, and I raise you Exodus 20, verses 4 to 6, which says, "You must not make for yourself a carved image or a form like anything that is in the heavens above, or on the earth below, or in the waters under the earth. You must not bow down to them, nor be enticed to serve them, for I, Jehovah your God, am a God who requires exclusive devotion, bringing punishment for the error of fathers upon sons, upon the 3rd generation, and upon the 4th generation of those who hate me, but showing loyal love to the 1000th generation of those who love me and keep my commandments." What was it that David Splane said again?
Jehovah does not hold the sins of the fathers against the sons.
That seems to directly contradict what I've just read there in Exodus. So which is it, David Splane? God does hold a grudge and does punish sons for the crimes of fathers, or he doesn't? At this point, all you're doing is confusing us. But again, the whole point of this long, rambling lecture seems to be about impressing Jehovah's Witnesses with how learned David Splane is and how wise and profound he is when it comes to his Bible knowledge.
Some, even in full-time service, have a hard time with it because they had a rough family background, and they may feel that they're worthless. Mary is a case in point. I'm going to call her Mary. Now, Mary's father was so violent that at times Mary, her mom, and her siblings had to get up in the middle of the night and run for their lives. And to the neighbors, they were that family. To make it worse, they were poor. So all this made Mary feel worthless. Until the day when she started studying with the witnesses. She developed her own relationship with Jehovah, and she accepted him as her father. And today, Mary's a pioneer. How does she feel about her life? Here's what she wrote. Jehovah is constantly looking for those who want a friendship with him. And here's a touching point. He's even looking into the hearts of children. Isn't that nice? Now, there are two lessons here. As Heman's example shows, our family background doesn't define who we are. Jehovah will deal with us as individuals. And a second example, one for the elders. Be like Jehovah. Treat each member of the family as an individual. Don't lump them all in together.
Wow. Well, that's chilling. David Splane, as a governing body member, knows all about the way child abuse is mishandled in the organization. He knows all about the way children are essentially thrown under the bus routinely when it comes to child abuse being covered up and not being reported to the authorities so that predators can go on and abuse more children. He knows all about this, and yet he has the gall to suggest that Jehovah is, quote,
He's even looking into the hearts of children.
If Jehovah's really doing that, David Splane, then why is he ignoring the pain of children, the misery and heartache of children who are being left behind by your group's horrendous policies when it comes to child abuse? And there's also the group's horrendous track record on domestic violence, which is essentially what we're hearing about here. Obviously, the abuse supposedly happened in a family that wasn't a Jehovah's Witness family, but nonetheless, how can they talk about a situation involving domestic violence when they put children and they put women and men in these abusive situations by telling abused spouses, you're not allowed to divorce? We had this very clearly explained to us in a recent JW Broadcasting episode, where it was, I think, Robert Suranko who said words to the effect of, there's never an excuse to get divorced outside of adultery.
What though if no adultery has been committed? If for some reason two people who are married to each other just don't like each other any longer? Divorce is not an option.
An organization that engineers these abusive situations by telling abused spouses that they can't escape, they can't move on with their lives, they can't remarry to someone that isn't hitting them or isn't abusing them. An organization that has these woeful policies has the gall to regale us with this story as though, oh, it's only on the outside where domestic violence happens. Once someone becomes a Jehovah's Witness, they can leave all of that violence and all of that misery behind. And hey, they can become a pioneer, and that will make everything somehow better. And what is it with David Splane saying, this girl is called Meris, this lady is called Meris, but I'm going to call her Mary?
Mary's is a case in point. I'm going to call her Mary.
Well, either her name is Meris or it isn't. Now that you've told us that her name is Meris, why are you then changing her name to Mary, seemingly as a matter of convenience for you? Oh, I'm going to call her Mary. That part made no sense. But most grating of all is the fact that David Splane, despite his position and despite knowing what he knows, having a grandstand view of how much misery he is causing along with his fellow governing body members by perpetuating these abusive policies, not just with regards to domestic violence, but also with regards to child sex abuse, how he can stand there and pretend that becoming a Jehovah's Witness and becoming a pioneer will make everything okay is completely beyond me.
Well, we haven't discussed anything earth-shaking here, and that isn't the point of this talk. But if you investigate the details and fill in the blanks, it'll contribute to the pleasure you derive from reading the Bible. And if Bible reading is a pleasant experience for you, you'll have no trouble to arrange a schedule of daily Bible reading. Enjoy!
Thank you, Brother Splain. We enjoyed your presentation, and we look forward to enjoying our Bible reading even more.
Oh yeah, I can't wait to get stuck into my Bible reading and put into practice all of the wisdom that David Splane has just given us about the need to obsess over inconsequential details concerning obscure Bible characters. My enjoyment of reading the Bible by doing that will surely just go through the roof. But yes, this is what Jehovah's Witnesses are expected to do. Just fixate over these unimportant details that no one cares about. And you'll notice at the end there, it's not just about having meaningful Bible reading according to when you feel like doing Bible reading. It's about reading the Bible every single day.
To arrange a schedule of daily Bible reading. Enjoy!
Enjoy! Yeah, I'm totally going to enjoy doing that. But what we have here, being serious for a moment, viewers, what we have here is yet more expectation being piled on Jehovah's Witnesses. It's not enough to be attending all the meetings. It's not enough to be doing the preaching work. It's not enough to be doing your own preparation and study and that kind of thing. You have to be reading the Bible every day, and not just reading the Bible, but reading the Bible the way David Splane wants you to read the Bible, to the point where you're obsessing over these ridiculous, inconsequential details. And if you're not doing that, then there's clearly a problem with you. Clearly you're not taking your faith seriously enough. I really do not miss being a Jehovah's Witness and constantly being reminded of all of these ways in which I'm somehow falling short and somehow not living up to expectations.